We return once again to the Divine Comedy. As we saw early on, Dante's influence on Lewis's life and writings is almost as impossible to overstate as the influence of the planets themselves. Dante's work shine like the rays of the sun through Lewis's writings, fostering soul in secret. In the three canticles of the Divine Comedy, Dante the Pilgrim travels through the realms of hell, purgatory, and paradise, one realm per canticle. We might easily jump to the conclusion that Lewis has Ransom do the same throughout the three books of the trilogy, but looking closer, we see Lewis did nothing so simple as that. The trajectory of the Ransom trilogy both parallels and contrasts with Dante's comedy. While each book brings Ransom closer to Earth according to the medieval order of the planets, first Mars, then Venus, then Earth itself, he brings deep heaven with him until paradise itself arrives on the silent planet. But at the same time, each book feels increasingly hellish as the conflict between good and evil intensifies. Ransom's movement throughout the trilogy is both opposite of Dante's and yet the same, for he is moving towards heaven and hell at the same time. Heaven and hell each grow thicker as Ransom comes closer to Earth, until the two realms finally meet face to face. Keeping this trajectory in mind, there are certainly parallels between Out of the Silent Planet and Inferno. We've already explored the opening scene in another chapter, how Ransom is first introduced to us as the pedestrian, echoing Dante's Pilgrim, first appearing in a Dantean dark wood, midway along the journey of life. But parallels in the literary structure continue. Dante falls unconscious before being taken across the river Lite, and wakes up on the opposite side, having been transported into an otherworldly realm while asleep. Ransom likewise is drugged, and comes back to consciousness only after he has been taken aboard the spaceship, and so wakes up having been brought into another realm himself. A stronger similarity is found in Ransom's and Dante's spiritual journey. Both men spend the first part of their journey learning to re-see the universe, particularly in terms of the sinfulness of mankind. Ransom's experiences on Malacandra put him into contact with other races of intelligent beings, which presents a rare opportunity to see mankind under a sort of microscope. He is forced to learn a new language, one that limits his ability to communicate, which means he must find creative ways to explain the human race. Ransom has several moments of shameful clarity. In explaining a fallen race to unfallen creatures, he has to own up to man's perverse and twisted nature. There are three quotations that serve to highlight the progression of Ransom's thought in terms of his awareness of the greatness of man's depravity. Let's look at each one in turn. At last it dawned on Ransom that it was not the Hrossa, but his own species, that were the puzzle. That the Hrossa should have monogamous instincts was mildly surprising. But how came it that the instincts of the Hrossa so closely resembled the unattained ideals of that far-divided species, man, whose instincts were so deplorably different? What was the history of man? In this first instance, Ransom is still struggling under the weight of his preconceived notions about extraterrestrial, non-human creatures, that because the Hrossa are more primitive in their technologies, they are thus somehow less intelligent or less moral in their culture than mankind. He is still assessing the Hrossa as he would a species of animal, in terms of their biological makeup, and that this is the reason for their monogamous traditions. Ransom is thus behaving in accordance with the assumptions of all the typical science fiction stories in Lewis's day. In modern stories of what the Americans call scientifictional type, stories about unknown species who inhabit other planets or the depth of the sea, these creatures are usually pictured as being wholly devoid of our moral standards, but as accepting our scientific standards. The implication is, of course, that scientific thought, being objective, will be the same for all creatures that can reason at all, whereas moral thought, being merely a subjective thing like one's taste in food, might be expected to vary from species to species. Ransom then has a bit of a revelation. In viewing this species as animals, he is operating under the assumption that the Hrossa just happened to attain, as a biological fluke, a human moral ideal, monogamy.
to keep listening to this audiobook. I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.